Okay, so once again, you're welcome. Let's go straight into the business of today. So we're going to be looking at task one, academic task one writing. This is one of the things that you will be expected to do as part of your IELTS writing exercise. For IELTS writing, there are two things that you will do. You are going to write a report. You will write a report and then you will write an essay. So the report accounts for 33% of your total score. This report is what we call task one. Okay? Then the essay accounts for 67%. 67% of your what? Of your total score. That's your total score for IELTS writing. So let me highlight this. I always like to say this whenever I'm teaching task one. On the exam day, don't start with task one. It's better to start with task two. Okay, that's very, very important. Please don't forget. As a matter of fact, anytime you are practicing IELTS writing and you want to do the two tasks, you want to do task one and task two, you should time yourself and start with the essay. Okay, it's very, very important so that you will not lose a lot of marks in case you don't finish. So in case you don't finish your writing and you start with task two, at least you are sure that you have done task two very well. Okay, so if you move on to task one and you run out of time while doing task one, it's not likely you will lose a lot of marks because task one is just 33% of your total score. Okay, but if you start with task one, the tendency is that you will spend so much time on task one, and by the time you move on to task two, you will probably run out of time. And if that happens, you're going to lose a lot of marks. So that's why it's better to start with task two. Start with your task two essay. Hope you get my point. I hope you guys are following me. Let me know if you are following me. I want to see a message. I want you to drop a chat. I want you to drop a response and just type, yes, I am with you. Yes, I am following you. Let me know if you guys are with me. Let me know who is with me. Let me know who is following. All right. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So, my focus in this lesson is on task one report. There's this PDF file I'm going to share with you. It contains a compilation of about 64 task one reports. And I'm going to be teaching from the book. That's the book I'm working with now. I'm going to be teaching from the book. But before I go into the model, into some of the model examples in the book, let me show you the types of task one reports. Okay, what are the types of task one reports that we have? Number one, which I believe is the easiest, what we call process charts. Number one report is called what? Is called process charts. Then number two is what we call map report. So let's call this process charts report. Then we have map report. Then we have what you call line graph report. That's number three, line graph. Number four is what we call bar charts report. Number four is called pie charts report. That's number five, right? Pie chart is number five. Number six is called table report. And number seven is called combination chart report. These are the 7 types of reports that you'll come across in IELTS task one writing. Okay? 7 types of what? 7 types of reports. In case you are thinking, will they bring out everything? No, they will not bring out everything. They can't give you 7 questions. They can only give you 1. Okay, so it's either they give you process chart, or they give you map, or they give you line graph, or they give you bar chart, or they give you pie chart, or they give you table, or they give you combination chart. These are the 7 types of reports. So inside this book, like I said, I will share it with you. You're going to see all the examples there. You see process charts, process charts, process charts. Okay. You're going to see process chart reports in this book. You're going to see maps, indoor map, outdoor map. You have maps also, plenty maps. Then line graph reports. Line graph, you can see line graphs here. All these are line graph reports. Then you're going to see bar chart reports here to see bar charts here, bar charts. Different types of what? Different types of bar chart reports. Then you're going to see pie charts reports, different types of pie chart reports. Then you're going to see table in the book also. I'm going to share the book with you. Table, you see table reports. Then finally, you have combination charts reports. So all these types of reports are reports you should be familiar with. You should be familiar with them. Okay. Now, I've talked about the two things you would do for task IELTS writing. I've talked about the different types of reports. Now, our report should have 3 components. What are the 3 components? The first one is called introduction. Okay, the first component of your report is called what? Introduction. The second component is called what? Overview. And the third component is called the main body. So inside the introduction, you introduce the report. Introduce the report. Mention the categories. State the what? Units of measurements if necessary. Sometimes it's actually not necessary. It's not in all report that you write unit of measurement. It's only in some cases when they clearly state the unit in the question or in the chart. So introduction, you introduce the report, mention the category, state the unit of measurement, use the right tenses. You must also use the right tenses. These are things that you need to keep in mind when writing your word, when writing the introduction for your report. Then the second component is what we call overview. In writing the overview, give a general picture of what is on the chart. Mention the main categories or the main or the overall trend. Okay? Mention the main categories with, let me add something to this place, with outstanding features. Maybe largest or smallest. Largest, the categories with the largest figures. The categories with the largest figures or the smallest figures. Or you just give us the overall trend. Trend talks about what increased. Is there anything that increased? Or is there anything that reduced? Or is there anything that fluctuated? Or is there anything that remained constant? That's what we mean by what? Overall trend. That's what we mean by what? Overview. These are things you do in your overview. Now, in writing your overview, let me add this. Do not quote specific data. In other words, e.g., don't write things like 52, 56%. Don't write percentage figures. Maybe you saw something on the chart and you saw that, okay, in 1992, the amount of or the percentage of people that bought mobile phones was 56%. Don't write that inside the overview. That should be written in the main body. Okay? Data should be written, data should be quoted inside the main body of a report. In the overview, you are just to describe the general trend. You tell us things like this: XYZ increased during the period, ABC reduced during the period. That's overview. We don't need to write and say something like the percentage was 22% or the amount of money spent was $3,000. No, that's not allowed in the overview. That is to be done inside the what? Inside the main body. Okay? So in the main body, you now give detailed, so when writing your main body, you give detailed description of what is on the charts. Okay? Quote figures. Make necessary comparison. That's what you do in the word in the main body of your report. So these are things that you need to keep in mind as components of a good report when writing your what? When writing your report. Okay? So let's look at examples now. I'm going to look at examples for all the 7 types of reports: process charts, maps, line graph, bar chart, pie chart, table, and combination chart. I will just follow in that order. Okay? So let's start with process charts. So I have so many process charts here, but I'll just pick, let me pick this one. So this process chart, this is a process chart for a book, for publishing a book. Look at what they wrote here. The diagram below shows the process of publishing a book. That's it. Okay. So our job is to what? Is to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main feature. Okay. So in writing your process chart report, there are 2 possibilities in terms of the tense to use. It's either you use future tense consistently throughout, or you use present simple tense. I always recommend present simple tense because that one it's likely that you will maintain that consistently throughout. It's not likely that you will change. So present simple tense. So if you look at this report now, let me transfer this to the top so that I know that that's what I want to focus on. When you get the book, you can look at the other one, the other tense. So look at it here. Present simple tense. So let's look at the beginning. The drawing, okay? The drawing, that's the introduction, the first part. The drawing illustrates. So instead of saying shows, what am I writing here? Illustrates. That's paraphrasing. In writing your introduction, you should paraphrase. So instead of saying diagram, this person said what? Drawing. Instead of writing shows, this person wrote what? Illustrates. The drawing illustrates the steps involved in publishing a book. Can you see that? In the introduction, they said, in the essay question prompt, they said, the diagram below shows the process of publishing a book. But when I wanted to paraphrase it when writing it, I said what? The drawing illustrates the steps involved in what? Publishing a book. That's introduction. Introduction for process chart is usually very short. In most cases, it's usually very short. Okay? So after this introduction, you now have the overview. Overall, book publishing is a linear process. What is the meaning of linear? Linear basically means that the process has a specific starting point. You can see it started at this point, number 1, and then a specific ending point. And the ending point does not have an arrow that connects to the starting point. You can see that between step 9 and step 1, there's no arrow. Between step 1 and step 2, there's arrow. Step 2 and 3, there's arrow. Step 3 and 4, there's arrow. You can see that there's arrow connecting all the steps all the way to number 9. But from 9 to 1, there's no arrow. That means that this process is a what? Is a linear process. The other type of process that you can have in task 1 writing is what we call cyclical. Let me show you an example of cyclical, then I'll come back to this thing. Look at this one here now. This is a cyclical process. Look at step 1. Step 1 is collection center. There's arrow that goes from collection center to recycling center. This is the arrow. Can you see arrow? That shows you that what? The next step after collection is what? Recycling. After recycling center, the next step is what? Aluminum recycling plant. Okay? Then after aluminum recycling plant, you have an arrow that goes to what? Drinks machine. Then after drinks machine, the arrow goes back to the starting point. This is what we call cyclical. Look at what I wrote here. Overall, the cyclical process. Can you see that? Cyclical process. This is another example. Okay, let me see. Okay, this one is not a cyclical process. This is not a cyclical process. Okay, this is also linear. This is not a cyclical process. So my point is that what? You are going to see both linear and what? Cyclical process when writing your report. So you need to look at it closely and ask yourself, is this linear or cyclical? Okay, so let's come back here. Overall, book publishing is a what? Is a linear process that takes 18 to 24 months. Look at it here. Where did I see that? Approximately 18 to 24 months. That's where we picked it from. So this overview is basically giving us a what? It's giving us an overall picture of the process. Okay? We said that word, it involves 9 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In this case, they label the steps. In some cases, they will not label the steps. Look at this one now, for example. You see here that they did not write 1, 2, 3, 4. They did not write 1, 2, 3, 4 in this particular drawing. But we know that this thing has, we can say it has four major steps. Step 1 is collection. Step 2 is recycling. Step 3 is what? Step 3 basically involves 4 sub steps or 4 minor steps. So step 3 is what happens at the aluminum recycling plant. And step 4 is what? What happens at the drinks machine. So there are 4 steps here. They did not label them 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes they will not label, sometimes they will label. Okay, if they don't label, just count. That's it. Very straightforward. Just count. So we have how many steps here? 4 steps. I'm sorry, 9 steps. We have 9 steps for this particular word, for this particular chart. 9 steps. So I write my overview, I write my introduction, sorry. I write my introduction, and then after writing my introduction, I write my word, I write my overview. So after my overview, what is the next thing I'll write? The next thing is to write the main body. So from this point, this part that I'm highlighting, all the way till the end, that is the word. That is the main body. That is what we call the word. That is what we call the main body. Hope you get my point. I hope you guys are still with me. Let me know if you are still following me. Let me see. Let's do sound check. Let me know if you are still following me. Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you very much. So, main body. Let's look at the main body. The book is first written. Can you see that? That's step 1, writing. You can see they wrote it here. Writing. And look at the way I wrote that word. Written. This is what we call what? This is what we call passive voice. Okay? Passive voice is one of the things that IELTS examiners expect to be able to demonstrate. The book is first written and typed out. So people will say, is this not past tense? No, it's not past tense. This is what we call passive voice in English writing. Okay? The book is first written and typed out using a typewriter. This thing here is a typewriter. This is a typewriter. Okay? Using a typewriter. The manuscripts. So after typing out the thing, what you have at the end of the day is what we call a manuscript. The manuscript is then sent to what? Publishing houses. You can see it's like you are putting something inside an envelope. That is a mail. So the manuscript is then sent to what? Publishing houses. That's step 2. Different editors working at the publishing houses will do what? Review this manuscript and make decisions. Look at it, that's step 3. Studying by editor. So they will study the manuscripts and then they will decide on what needs to be corrected and whatever it is. I just wrote here that word. Make decisions. This is main body. So I want you to notice something here that what? My introduction and my overview, they are in one paragraph. Everything, one paragraph for introduction and overview. That's what I did here. And main body has 2 paragraphs. In some other reports, you will see that I separated introduction from overview. Let me show you. Let me show you some cases where I separated introduction from overview. Sometimes I join the 2. Sometimes I separate the what's it called? Introduction from the overview. But in process charts, most times we combine the 2 because process chart is usually very, very short. Usually very, very short. So for process charts, in most cases, we combine the two, what's it called? Those two parts. So almost all the examples here, I combine introduction and overview. Oh, look at this case now. Look at this one here now. Introduction. The drawing illustrates the process involved in the production of electrical energy from coal. That's all for introduction. Next paragraph is the overview. Overall, it is clear that coal, can you see that? So you see here, in this case, I separated introduction from overview. Okay? So if you like, this case too, yeah, this one too, I separated the two. Introduction is separated from overview. So if you like, you can combine. If you like, you can what? You can separate. Okay? Now, let me come back to my main body here. So different editors at the publishing houses review the manuscripts and make decisions. One of these publishers is chosen by the author. Okay, that's step 4 that we are trying to write. One of these publishers is chosen by the author, and after that, a written legal document. That's what number 4. Number 4 says contract made with publishing houses. Who makes the contract? Is the author. I want you to notice that in this whole diagram, there's nothing like author there. But you should know that author is the person that writes a book. That's part of vocabulary. Okay? As a candidate, you should know that an author is the person that writes a book. So author should show up in your report. Even if they did not write it in the chat. There are some things you will not see on the chat, but from your knowledge of life, from what you know, okay, as an adult, as a grown-up, you should know that an author writes a book. Okay, and an author will be involved in this process. So one of these publishers is chosen by the author, and after that, a written legal agreement is made with the author. Once this has been done, the next phase of the publishing process begins. So you see that in this first paragraph 2 of the report, we have detailed description of step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. Okay, that's what we have here. Now let's look at the next paragraph. So the next paragraph now starts by telling us that what? The layout of the book is designed. That's step 5. The layout of the book is designed using a computer. This thing is a computer. Once corrections are made to the layout, that's step 6. Can you see cohesion? Once corrections are made to the layout and a final decision is made, the design is sent to the what? Printing department of the publishing house. And the book is printed. That's step 7, printing. Can you see that? After printing, the book goes through the binding process. That's step 8, binding. The book goes through the word binding process, after which it is distributed to bookshops for sale to readers and end users. So that's distribution to bookshops. And that is all for this word. That is all for this report. Very straightforward. Very straightforward. Process charts. Okay, so your report has what? The introduction, the overview, and then the main body. In this case, the main body contains what? 2 paragraphs. Okay, so I hope you get the point about process chart. Now let's look at the second type of report. We call it maps. Okay, let's look at this map here. This is a map of a city, or let's call it a map of a town, or maybe a particular area in a town. They call it Stokeford. Now, maps can have variants. Let me say this before I go into the details. Maps can have what? Variants. In other words, you probably see some maps that have drawing of outdoor area. Outdoor. Outdoor basically means outside. So this map here is an outdoor map. We also have indoor map. Let me show you an example. This one here is is also an outdoor map. Outdoor map. Outdoor basically means outside. Outside. This one here is an indoor map. It's the map of a bookstore. A bookstore is like a bookshop. Bookstore, bookshop, those two things mean the same thing. So bookstore, look at it here. Entrance. So you enter into a building. Inside that building is a bookshop. So this is an indoor map. Indoor map. This one here, let me ask a question. Everybody who wants to tell me, what kind of map is this? Is this one outdoor or indoor? This map here, is it outdoor or indoor? Anybody? I want you to type your response in the chat box. What kind of map is this? Is this outdoor map or indoor map? Thank you very much. You are correct. This is outdoor map. You can see it's outside. University building. You can see these are buildings. These are trees. A tree cannot be inside the house. Train station. Everything here is outside. Port. This is a port. And this blue thing represents water body. Probably ocean or sea. So this is outdoor map. Outside. Okay. Let's check out another one. Look at this one here. This one has a combination of both outdoor and indoor. Inside, this is a mall. Let me magnify this a little bit. So this is a mall, a shopping center. This is the entrance. So you enter it and then you have all these different parts of the mall. But then the diagram also gives us the surrounding of the mall. So this particular map has a combination of both outdoor and indoor features. So what is my point, ladies and gentlemen? You're going to see maps that have both. You're going to see outdoor maps. Everything is outdoor, like this one here now. Everything here is outdoor. You're going to see indoor maps, like this one here now for the bookstore. And then you're going to see some maps that have both outdoor and indoor features, like this Happy Valley Shopping Center map. Okay? So you can have different types of maps. Then maps can also have different dates. Some maps will have dates in the past, like this one now. We have a map for 1982 and a map for 2012. The two dates are in the past. Some maps will have a date for the past and a date for today, like this one now. Castellon 2000, that date is in the past. Castellon today, that's present day. Some maps are like that. Anytime you see a map that has today, just make sure you use the right tense when describing that map. So for a map that has today, the tense you are going to use is what we call present perfect tense. Look at this thing here. Have been, that's present perfect tense. This have been, you're going to see show up a lot in this particular report. Have been. Okay? The land area between this pedestrian walkway and the port has been. Can you see that? That's present perfect tense. And why am I using that? It's simply because our second map is for today. Assuming our second map is not for today, the tense I'm going to be using is going to be what? It's going to be past tense. Look at this one here now. Look at this Stokeford map. The first map is for which year? 1930. That's the first map. The second map is for 2010. And in writing my report, you are going to see that I used what? I used past tense when I was describing the 2010 report. So how do we write our map? Again, we follow the same pattern. Introduction, the maps. So always use plural because usually you're going to see two maps. In some cases, they can give you three maps. So look at it. The maps illustrate. I did not put S here. Why? Because our maps is plural. So our verb also has to be what? Plural. A plural verb does not have S. The maps illustrate the changes that took place in the village of Stokeford. Notice that my Stokeford is capital S. Stokeford. Between 1930 and 2010. That's all for my introduction. The introduction basically gives me an is basically introducing the map, the report. Now, the next component is the overview. Overall, so you see here in this case, I joined the two. I joined our introduction and our overview. They are in the same paragraph. Okay. So overall, the number of houses in the village increased and the level of agricultural activities reduced significantly. Let me magnify this thing so that you will see what I mean by that overview. Look at the map closely. So when writing the overview for a map, you need to look for what are the things that changed. What are the things that changed? What are the things that were introduced? In other words, look, what is it that was in the new map? What can you see in the new map that was not in the old map? In other words, that thing was introduced. For example, if you look at this new map very well, look at this closely, look at it closely, you are going to see that there are many houses, all these things here. Look at it, they wrote houses here. All these things here, houses, houses. If you look at the old map, you can't see it there. You can't see all those houses there. That means that what? Houses have been introduced. So you look for things that have been introduced. You look for things that have been changed. In other words, you will see them in the old map. But in the new map, they have been modified or changed. For example, look at this thing here now. Primary school is just like one house, one building, primary school. But when you come to the new map, you see that something has been added. They've modified the primary school. They've modified it. I hope you're getting the gist. So the same thing with this particular thing here. They called it large house here. And that's just 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. But when you come to the new map, you're going to see that the blocks have increased to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the name has changed to what? Retirement house. And then there's now a road. Here, there was no road. It was just a footpath. Here, there's now a road that goes to the what? Retirement house. So you look for the things that changed. You look for new things that were introduced. You look for what? Things that changed. And then you look for things that were removed. In some maps, you're going to see that some features have been removed. In this case now, farms have been, all these animals represent farm. They even wrote it here, farmland. But here you can't say farmland. That means farmland has been removed. And that's what you see in this overview. Overall, the number of houses in the village increased. Number of houses, that's what I showed you earlier on. Number of houses increased. And the level of agricultural activity is reduced. Farmland has gone. That's what I mean by level of agricultural activity is reduced. Or we can say the level of agricultural infrastructure reduced. Okay? Level of what? Agricultural infrastructure reduced significantly. Okay? Now, after writing your introduction and your overview, the next thing to do is to now write and describe the old map or describe the first map. So in this case, my first map is for what? Stokeford 1930. My first map is for what? Is for Stokeford 1930. So I described Stokeford in 1930. What did Stokeford look like in what? In 1930. Look at it. In 1930, Stokeford village had 2 large farmland areas located in its northeastern and southern side. Okay? Stokeford village had 2 large farmland areas located where? In its northeastern and southern side. What is northeastern? Let me show you northeastern. Northeast, anytime you see a map, just imagine that what? At the top here is the north, at the bottom here is the south, on the right side is east, on the left side is west. Okay? North, south, east, west. So when they say northeastern, northeastern is between north and east. So this area here is called what? Northeastern. Okay? So look at the first sentence. Stokeford village had 2 farmland areas located in the what? Northeastern and southern side. So in 1930, look at 1930 here. There's a farmland here. Can you see? Northeastern. And then south. This is south. Remember what I said? North, south, east, west. So that's what this first sentence indicates. Northeastern and southern side. The main river running through the village extended from the northeastern corner. This is northeastern corner. Extended from the northeastern corner towards the west. So you see, this is west. It extended from the northeastern corner towards the west. Hope you are following. Of the village, and downwards towards the what? Southwestern corner. So this is south, this is west. So downwards, it curved downwards, and then it went towards the what? Southwestern corner. And a small bridge, look at the bridge here, was situated across the river at the northern side of the village. So this is the northern side of the village, a small bridge. I want you to notice past tense. Was extended, that's past tense. Was, that's past tense. Because I'm referring to 1930. That's past. So I hope you guys are getting my gist. Let me know if you are hearing me. Let me know. I want you to drop a message. Let me see who is following me. Let's see who is following me. Let me see if you are with me. Hope you are getting the gist. Map. We have talked about process charts. Now we are looking at maps. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. I can see that feedback. So, a road. Next one is what? A road. So I've talked about the river. Look at the river here. We are looking at 1930 map. See the river? Now the road. This road here. Okay? So look at it. In addition, that's a cohesive tool. In addition, a road runs from the what? A road. A road runs from the what? North. Where's north? Look at north here. From the north. Okay? To the south. Let me add that one here. A road runs from the north to the south of the village, and a few houses, shops, and post office. Let's magnify this thing a little bit. A few houses. Look at it. This is the road. Look at the houses. Key houses. That's how I know it's houses. Look at the bottom here. They gave us the key houses. So these are houses. These are houses. These are shops. They already labeled it here. Post office. Okay. So it's very straightforward. So you are basically describing what you are seeing on the map. That's what you are doing. Okay? That's what you are doing. So look at it. A road, where is it now? In addition, a road runs from the north to the south of the village, and a few houses, shops, and post office were situated by the road around the central area of the village. Around the central area, or let's say around the center. So this is a center. This is the center. Let me draw something. This is the center. This part is what we are calling center. Okay? Around the center of the village. Hope you get the gist. So, around the center of the village, around the central area of the village, or we can say, or around the center of the village. A primary school and a large house with some gardens were also sited around the center. So this is a primary school and a large house with garden. So this is a large house with gardens. So that's all for the 1930 map. Now look at the next. So after writing about the first map, 1930 map, we now move to the next map, which is the what? The 20, let me see the year. The 2010 map. Okay? So look at the description of the 2010 map. 80 years later in 2010, the bridge across the river Stoke remained intact. Can you see tenses again? Remained, past tense. So the bridge has not changed. Can you see? So in writing your report in describing the second map, you should now ensure that you highlight what did not change, highlight what changed, highlight what was introduced afresh. And that's what you see here. So the bridge remained intact, but the road extending southward from the bridge had many feeder roads. What's the meaning of feeder roads? Feeder roads are like roads that connect to a main road. Look at one feeder road here. This one here is a feeder road. This is another one. This is another one. Here we have another one that goes to the retirement home. We have this one that looks like a roundabout. Feeder roads connected to it. That's what we mean. The number of houses by the sides of this main road had, can you see? Had. Now let me highlight something here. You see this tense here that I'm using here? This is what we call past perfect. Past perfect, because I'm referring to something that happened in 2010. We are not in 2010 again. We are in 2025. As at the time of this recording, we are in 2025. Okay? So add what? The number of houses by the sides of this main road had increased. And the side road also had many houses sited close to them. Had, past perfect. Okay? The large house located in the central area of the village had been remodeled. Remodeled. And what? More blocks have been what? Added to it. So that's it here. More blocks. It now has 5 blocks. The size of the gardens had reduced and it was now being used as a retirement home. The primary school was also enlarged with 2 more blocks added to it. In addition, the farmland areas in the south and the northeast, as well as the shops located in the central area, had been converted for other purposes. Can you see that? That's what description of our 2 maps. Ladies and gentlemen, map report. I hope you get the gist. So line graph, maps. I've talked about process charts. I've talked about maps. Now let's look at line graph. That's the third type of report. Let's look at line graph report. Let's look at this one here. So for our line graph, again, we follow the same format. You write your introduction. After writing your introduction, you write your what? Overview. Same idea. You can put introduction and overview in one paragraph, or you can separate them. In this particular example now, I put the 2 in one paragraph. Look at this other example here. Let me see. Let me check out whether there's one where I separated. I want to look for one where I separated them. Yeah, look at this one here now. In this case, I separated the introduction from the overview. Introduction is one paragraph, overview is another paragraph. Can you see that? So let's look at this one here. Let's look at this one I wanted to show you earlier on. Let me bring it up so that we'll be able to see the two items side by side. Okay. So here is our report, ladies and gentlemen. The chart illustrates the proportion. Another word for proportion is percentage. Another word for proportion is fraction. So those 3 words can be used interchangeably. Percentage, fraction, and what? Proportion. Okay? Now, the chart illustrates the proportion of UK residents that attended cinema every 5 years. 1990, 1995, 2000, 2005, 2010. That's every 5 years. Okay? Every 5 years over a 20-year period. I want you to notice the way I wrote my 20-year. I did not put S there. Okay? That's how you write it. Over a 20-year period. Over a 20-year period. From 1990 till what? 2010. Look at it here. 1990 till 2010. That's introduction. First sentence of our introduction. You can see the way I wrote it. I mentioned the main issue. What is the main issue here? The percentage of individuals that attended cinema in the UK. I mentioned the timeline, 1990 to 2010. That's the second thing you write in your introduction. Then the third thing is to write your what? The categories. I used another sentence for that. From the chart, the residents are categorized into 4 age groups, colon, and then I mentioned the age groups. 10 to 24 years, comma, 24 to 34 years, comma, 34 to 44 years, comma, and 44 to 54 years. Okay? That's your word. That's our next sentence that gives us the categories. Then the next sentence here is now the overview. Overall, there was a general increase in cinema attendance by people in all the age groups. So you see that word, this sentence here, this particular phrase here, general increase. How? For the first age group, you can see that the thing went up. The second age group too, the thing went up. The third age group too, the thing went up. The fourth age group, that's what we call general increase. Somebody says, what of that place that is going down? Yes, that's just a temporary thing. Temporary is a temporary decrease. Okay, if you like, you can write about it. If you like, if you don't write about it, it's not going to affect your mark. Okay, this is overview. We don't need to be detailed. When you get to the main body, you can now begin to give details. Okay, so a general increase in cinema attendance by people in all the age groups. However, now this sentence now wants to talk about this part. However, some fluctuations were reported between 1995 and what? 2005. Some fluctuations were reported. So you see, I've addressed that issue of what? That part that is going down, going down, going down. Hope you get the gist. So after my overview, what is the next thing I'll write? The next thing is to write my main body. Okay, so in writing the main body, you start with one of the categories. Either you start with the biggest category or with the smallest category. Okay, in this particular example now, I started with the word with the age group 44 to 54 years. That's the age group with the largest figure. That's the biggest category. Okay, so I started with the age group that had the largest percentage figure. So to start with, cinema attendance was the most common. This thing here, this word, this phrase here, most common. This is what I call language of comparison. It's a word that we use to compare. Okay, I call this thing language. This is an example of a word that represents language of comparison. Cinema attendance was most common among people within the age group of 44 to 54 years every year from 1990 till 2010. This age group also reported the most significant increase throughout the period. In 1990, now, want to give details and want to quote figures. In 1990, about 37% of these middle-aged individuals attended cinema. Semicolon. The figure increased slightly to what? 40% in 1995. A slight drop was recorded in the year 2000, after which there was a sharp increase. Can you see that? A slight drop was what? Recorded. Look at this drop here. That's what we call slight drop. And after that, there was a sharp increase. And by 2010, about 51% of people in this age group attended cinema. So you look at it that what? In this whole paragraph, I focused on just one age group, 44 to 54 years. I wrote about it until I finished. That's how to demonstrate good writing skill, good cohesion. Next paragraph. A similar pattern was followed by individuals in the remaining age group. In the what? In the remaining age group. 36% of those aged 34 to 44 years and 24% of those aged 24 to 34 years attended cinema in 1990. So here I'm picking two age groups, 34 to 44 years and 24 to 34 years. The middle group, green and red. The proportions for both age groups fluctuated between 1995 and 2005, but by 2010, a figure of 42% was reported for the word 34 to 44-year-olds, while the figure of 32% was reported for the word 24. So you see that I'm quoting figures as I'm describing. Quoting figures as I'm describing. Then the last paragraph is now for the youngest age group. Young people within the age group of 14 to 24 years reported the least, can you say language of comparison again? Least or lowest cinema attendance throughout the period. 15% of them attended cinema in 1990, and this figure increased slightly in 1995. However, just as was reported for the other age groups, there was a drop in 2000. Attendance increased in 2005 to what? 20%, and by 2010, a figure of what? 21% was reported. That's what line graph report. So you see line graph, again, we followed our pattern. Introduction. After introduction is what? Overview. After the overview is what? Main body. Inside the main body, you give detailed description of the different categories. And you quote figures. You make comparison where necessary. That's what we call what? Academic task one writing. Okay? Now let's look at the next type of charts. The next one I want to talk about is bar charts. Bar charts. Now for bar chart reports, there are usually going to be two possibilities. It's either you have a report that involves language of comparison only. Let me write something about that. I want you to follow closely here, ladies and gentlemen. This thing I'm about to say is extremely important. Two languages to master. Okay? The first one is called what? Language of trend. The first one is called what? Language of trend. And the second one is called language of comparison. Okay? What do I mean by language of trend? Words that represent language of trend are increase, decrease, fluctuate, or stable. All these words represent what? These are the four words that represent language of trend. Okay? Then words that represent language of comparison. I already talked about it when I was talking about that line graph. Words like greater, lesser, fewer, more common, least, lowest, most populated, most. Okay? The list for this language of comparison, the list is very long. There are many words that can fit into language of comparison. Okay? But for language of trend, there are just four. Increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. Now, how do we know the language to use? So let me give you the guideline for that. If your report, let me just say report, has one date, if your report has one date or no date, if your report has one date or it doesn't have any date, use the language of comparison only. If your report has two or more dates, use both language of trend and what? Comparison. Use both. So usually line graphs will have two or more dates. Usually, that's a common thing. And when we say dates, what do I mean by dates? What do we mean by dates? Dates can refer to years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, decades. When you say decades, you are referring to maybe you see on a chart, you see 1990s, 1980s, 1970s. Those are decades. On the chart, you see those they fall into the category of dates. When I say two or more dates, okay? If you look at the chart and you see January, you see figures for January, you see figures for February, you see figures for March, you see figures for April. They also fall into the category of dates. It could be weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. It could be days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It could be hours, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 noon, 1 p.m., 2 p.m. It could be hours. A chart can give you data of what happened in different hours. It happens. It can happen. So anytime you see multiple stuffs like that, multiple dates like that, you are to use both language of trend and language of comparison. Let me show you what I mean. This chart now, ladies and gentlemen, how many dates can we see on this chart? Let me see who is following so far. I want you to tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what language am I to use for this chart based on what I've said so far? Am I to use language of comparison only, Or am I to use both language of trend and comparison? Let me see who is following. I want you guys to tell me, what language am I to use for this chart? Am I to use language of comparison only, or am I to use both language of trend and language of comparison? I want you to drop your message, drop your answer in the Zoom chat. What language am I to use here? Thank you very much. We have to use both. We have to use both. Okay? Both language. Why? Because we have two dates, 1980 and 2015. We have to use both language of trend and language of comparison. So look at my example here. Look at my report here. The bar chart illustrates information. So this is our what? Our introduction and overview. Okay? Introduction. Data is provided for the year 1980 and 2015. The 5 countries are, and then I mentioned the countries. Then next is the overview. Overall, it is clear that in 4 of the 5 countries represented by the chart, there was an increase. This word here represents what? Language of what? Language of trend. I already mentioned that. Now look at the main body. To start with, South Korea, which had the lowest proportion. Who can tell me what is this? This thing I put in bold now. Lowest proportion. What language does it represent? Is it language of trend or language of comparison? Lowest proportion. Let me see who will get it. I've already mentioned it earlier on. I already said something to help you with this question. What is the meaning of lowest proportion? Is it language of trend or is it language of comparison? What does it stand for? Is it standing for language of trend or language of comparison? Thank you. It represents language of comparison. Lowest proportion. Look at the chart. South Korea. Look at South Korea here. Can you see that South Korea that's the smallest bar on this bar chart? South Korea. And that's what we are writing here. To start with, South Korea, which had the lowest proportion of women enrolled for higher education in 1980, about 15%, had its figure doubled to 30% in 2015. Can you see that? However, compared to other countries, it still had the least. Can you see language of comparison again? It still had the least proportion of female school leavers signing up for higher education. In what? In 2015. Let me add that to it. In 2015. Next to South Korea were the United Kingdom. Anytime you want to write United Kingdom, always put TH in front of it. Okay? Next to South Korea were what? The United Kingdom and the United States of America. In 1980, now I want to give detail. The UK had 35% of its female school leavers enrolling for higher education. And this figure, this thing here that I'm putting in, that I'm highlighting, what language is this thing here? Is it language of trend or language of comparison? Which language is this thing here? This figure increased. What language is this, everybody? So you see, sentence construction, that's what I'm emphasizing. Thank you. That's language of trend. Increased. This figure increased. Can you see that the two languages have shown up here in this report? Why? Because we have two dates, 1980 and 2015. This figure increased to about what? 55% in 2015. The United States had around 48% of its female school leavers enrolling for higher education in 1980. And this figure did what? Increased. Language of what? Language of trend. Language of trend. So, what am I doing in this second paragraph? I'm basically describing what? I'm describing South Korea, and then I'm not describing UK and what? The United States. And then the last paragraph is now for France and Australia. France in 1980 had half of its female school leavers going on to study in the university. And this figure did what? Increased slightly. What is the meaning of increased slightly? Who can tell me? Slightly. It doesn't mean big change or small change. France, look at France here. When you say increased slightly, what does it mean? Big change or small change? Thank you, small change. That's what we mean by it slightly. And that's what you see here. You can see that compared to other countries, France had the smallest percentage change. So, increased slightly to 52% in the year 2015. Australia reported no change. What is the meaning of no change? That means the thing was constant. And another language of what? Language of trend. It, however, had the highest. Aha. Can you see language of comparison again? So our sentences must reflect what? The use of the appropriate languages. It's extremely important. Let me show you another one. Okay, let me ask a question about this chart. Ladies and gentlemen, what language am I to use for this chart? Am I to use language of comparison only, or am I to use both language of trend and comparison? What language am I to use for this chart? Everybody, what language am I to use for this chart? Thank you. Language of comparison only. Why? Who can tell me the reason? Let me see. Why am I to use language of comparison only? What is the reason for using language of comparison only for this chart? What is the reason? There must be a reason though. Thank you. Only one date. 2005. That's it. All the figures here represent what happened in 2005. Everything here represents what happened in 2005. So if you look at this chart closely, if you look at this report closely, you will not see anything like increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. You will not see anything like decrease in this chart. Decrease. Some people will look at this chart and they will be saying that Poland reduced. They will say that, color red is smaller than color blue. So they will say Poland reduced, Italy reduced, Hungary reduced, Germany reduced. No, 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 no. If you write that kind of thing, you are writing nonsense. Nonsense. So people say I used to sound funny when I say that word nonsense. If you write decrease, decrease, decrease for this chart, you have already written no, rubbish, rubbish. Please don't write rubbish, oh. And how do you make sure you don't write rubbish? By ensuring that you use the right language. So look at it here. Overall, it is clear that in all the 5 countries, the rate of unemployment was greater. Language of what? Comparison. Okay? Also, while Poland had the highest, can you see language of comparison again? You will not see anything like reduce. Look at this overview. There's nothing like reduce there. If you use reduce, you are using the wrong language. So you see the same pattern. Introduction, after introduction, overview. Overview basically gives us a word, a general picture. Like I mentioned the largest category. Okay? Greater among young people. Highest percentage was in Poland. And then Denmark had the least. That's what? Overview. And then after the overview, I now wrote my main body. Poland ranked as the country with the highest unemployment rates in what? In 2005. Semicolon. A little above 35% of the country's working youths within the age 15 to 24 were unemployed, compared to 15% of the general population. In terms of youth unemployment, next in rank was Italy. So you see, I begin to describe. I wrote about Poland first, and then I moved to Italy. After Italy, I moved to what? Hungary, Germany, and Denmark. Okay? Then I now move to the next paragraph to write about what? Overall unemployment. So this particular part focused more on youth unemployment. You see that it's majorly unemployed youths. Youth unemployment is what you're going to see in this first main body, first paragraph of the main body. But the other one is for overall unemployment. Look at it here. Overall unemployment. Let's call this one youth. This one color blue is for youth unemployment. Somebody says, how do you know it's youth? This is the age. Look at the age here. This is the age group of youth, 15 to 24 years. According to the United Nations, a youth begins from 15 years. That's where youth starts from. Okay? So if you don't know now, you know. I'm telling you now. Okay? All right. So overall, I'm sorry, contrastingly, Germany had higher overall unemployment rate. Can you see language of comparison again? Higher overall unemployment rates than Italy, Hungary, and what? And Denmark. While Germany had 10% of its working people unemployed in 2005, Italy had a lower figure of about what? 7%. Hungary had about 6.5%, and Denmark had the lowest figure of what? 3%. That's all. Data, what's it called? Bar chart reports with what? With one date. Bar chart report with one date. Hope you get the gist. So our languages must be accurate. You'll see more examples in this book. Please, I want you to take time to study this book very well so that you become what? You become familiar with how to construct your word, your sentences. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this bar chart and then I'll go to pie chart after this. What language am I to use for this bar chart? Who can tell me? Anybody? What is the language to use for this particular bar chart? I want you to look at it closely and tell me. What language am I to use for this bar chart? I want you to tell me the language and tell me the reason. What is the language to use here and why? Tell me the language and tell me the reason. Anybody? I'm waiting. Oh, what language are we to use here? Okay, thank you very much. Very good. I like that. Somebody says both languages because of different months. Okay. We have to use both. Somebody says language of trend and comparison. Yes, correct. We have to use both languages. Why? Somebody says, but I thought it's just one date, 2019. No, don't look at this place only. Come and look at the chart also. You see that we have figures for January, we have figures for February, we have figures for March. Those represent different dates. That means we have four dates. That means you should use both languages. Okay? So, and when you look at the main report, you're going to see that those two languages are represented maximally. Okay? So, let's look at the next type of report. That's pie charts. So, this guideline of language will apply with bar charts. It will apply for what? For bar charts. It will apply for pie charts, like what we have here now. This is a pie chart that has two dates. 2015, that's in the past. 2040, that's in the future. So here, in writing our report, we must use future tense whenever I want to talk about this part of the pie chart report. And you see it here. You see it is in bold. Look at it. Let me highlight. Let me take it from here. Overall, the total energy capacity of the world will increase. Can you see that? In 2015, it was 6.688. But by 2040, it will become what? 11.678. Will increase by almost double. Will increase. The proportional inputs of fossil fuels, nuclear, and other renewables will reduce. Can you see? Language of what? Language of trend and also what? Future tense. Future tense. So, in writing our pie chart report, again, we write our introduction. Look at the introduction here. Data is provided for 2015 and 2040. That's the introduction. And then after that, we have our what? We have our overview. Overview says that what? The 5 sources are what? I'm sorry. Inputs. Overview says that inputs from other renewables. No. Sorry, overview starts from here. Overall, that's it. Overview. And then after the overview, what do we move to? We move on to the word, to the main body. So in this main body, we first wrote about the word, the 2015 map. In 2015, the majority, the word, the majority of the world's electricity, 64%, was produced from fossil fuels. Can you see language of comparison? Majority. This was closely followed by other renewable sources, semicolon. They accounted for about a quarter of total global energy production. The other sources, dash, wind, nuclear, and solar, dash, had relatively minimal contributions. Can you see minimal? Very tiny. 2%, 5%, and 6%. And that's what you are seeing here. Respectively. Let me show you the meaning of respectively. Wind is for 5%. That's the meaning of respectively. Nuclear is for 6%. That's the meaning of respectively. Solar is for 2%. That is the meaning of respectively. So respectively means that what? Follow the arrangement I gave earlier on. Follow the arrangement. Follow the order. The order. O-R-D-E-R. The order stands for arrangement. Okay. So this second, what's it called? Paragraph gives us what? Description of the first pie chart. And then the third paragraph now talks about the 2040 charts. Now look at the third paragraph. By 2040, the world's total energy capacity is expected to increase by almost double from 6.68 gigawatts toward 11.68 gigawatts. However, the input of some sources will reduce. Can you see future tense? While the input of other sources will increase. Can you say future tense? Will increase. I did not say increased. If you say increase, that's what? That's wrong tense that you are using. Future, we are using past tense. The proportion of global energy from fossil fuels is expected to drop. Another paraphrase for reduce. Another word for reduce, that's drop. From 64% proportion that was reported in 2015 to 44% in 2040. So it's going to reduce. Look at it here. 64, 2015, 44. Can you see? That's what they are writing there. That's what we are saying here. It's expected to what? Reduce. Similarly, the input of solar sources as well as other renewable will report slight decline. The proportion from solar will reduce from 6% to 5%, while that of other renewables will reduce from 23% to what? 21%. Can you see reduction? And then the last paragraph now gives us the report for what? The ones that will increase. Can you see that? So in writing the report, what happened here? We did a word. We wrote about the ones that will reduce in paragraph 3, and then we wrote about the ones that will increase in paragraph 4. That's good cohesion. That's what we call good cohesion. Okay? So a report that has what? Multiple dates, demonstrating what? The two languages. Language of trend and language of comparison. Let me show you one that involves just language of comparison. This one here, language of comparison, is what we are going to use for this report. You can't see any dates here. The chart illustrates the spending of households in two countries on different consumer items. There's no, what's it called? Dates here. Okay, 2010. I can see 2010 here. Okay, so we use, it's just one date. It's just one date. So we still use our word. We still use our language of comparison. Look at it. Look at language of, you see that in this report, you will not see anything like increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. You will not see it there. Overall, while Japanese spent greater proportion, what language is that? Language of comparison. Greater proportion on other goods and services and food. Malaysians spent the largest proportions. Can you see that? Language of what? Comparison. Okay? I did not use words like increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. It's not there. See another word that represents language of comparison. Least percentage. So look at the main body. To start with, the greatest percentage of Japanese spending was on other goods and services, and the least was on healthcare. Can you see language of comparison? So this first paragraph talks about what? Japan. 29% of household income was spent on other goods and services, followed by food, which accounted for what? 24% of spending. Next to this are what? Where, this one should be where. Next to this were, because it's past tense, 2010. Next to this were what? Were housing and transportation, which accounted for 21% and 20% respectively. The least proportion of income was spent on healthcare, reported as only 6%. So we are describing and we are giving what? Detailed information. That's what we do in the main body. I wrote about what? I wrote about Japan first, and then now I moved to Malaysia. Unlike the Japanese, the Malaysians spend the largest proportion of their income on housing. What did the Japanese spend the largest proportion on? Other goods and services. Can you see comparison now? This first sentence compares Malaysians' largest category to Japan's largest category. That's it. Adequate what? Comparison. So you see that over this whole report, everything, you're not seeing things like increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. Why? Because we are not to use all those kinds of words in a report that involves language of comparison only. In a report that has just one date. And that same principle applies to a report that has what? That has no date. Okay? Look at this one here now. This is also going to involve what? Now, this one has two dates, 1995 and 2005. So this one will involve both languages. Look at this one here. This one has no date. To write the report for this now, you are going to use language of comparison only. And that's what you see all over the report here. So these are things I want you to look out for. As I'm going, like I said, I've been saying it, I will say it again. I'm going to share this PDF file with you so that you can study all the model answers. There are about 64 of them. It should be up to 64. Okay? You study them and use them as a guide when practicing. I'm going to share assignments. You're going to write reports and you're going to send them to me to assess. Okay? Let me look at table. Let's treat table. We follow the same idea for table. What is the idea? Introduction, overview, and what? Main body. That's the pattern. And then, of course, you keep in mind the concept of language. So look at this particular report now, everybody. What language am I to use for this report? Let me see. What language am I to use for this table report? What language am I to use? Who can tell me? What language am I to use for this report? Am I to use language of comparison only, or am I to use both language of trend and comparison? What language? Thank you very much. You're correct. Language of comparison only. Comparison. Why? Because we have just 1 year, 2005. In other words, everything on this table represents what happened in 2005. That's it. So in this report, you're going to see that you will not see things like what's it called? Increase, decrease, fluctuate, stable. You will not see it in this report. You will not see those words there because those are wrong languages to use. Okay? So please keep this thing in mind. Very, very important. Now let's look at it quickly. The table presents data about the percentage use of 4 different types of fuel for the purpose of generating electricity in 5 Asian countries. The countries are, can you see the countries here? Okay? And the 4 major fuel types are, these are the 4 major fuel types. Nuclear, coal and ignite, petroleum and what have you. The contribution of other fuel types is also represented. Overall, now look at the overview. Coal and lignite, look at coal and lignite here, were more commonly used as fuel sources in Malaysia. Can you see the figure for Malaysia and Singapore that coal and lignite is the biggest? In Japan, other sources of fuel. Where's Japan? See Japan here. Other sources of fuel. Sorry. While nuclear fuel was the most preferred in Japan, I was wondering. Japan is nuclear fuel. It's bigger than other sources. Other sources of fuel and petroleum products were the two major fuel sources in Thailand. See Thailand here. Thailand and Singapore. So other sources is the largest, other sources is the largest. So that's what? Overview. Overview. And then after the overview, we now move to the main body. So look at the main body here. For main body, I started with Malaysia. In Malaysia, look at all these things I'm highlighting now. From here all the way till this point where they wrote 2%. That's for Malaysia. Everything that I put in highlights that I've highlighted now represent what? Represent the figures for what? Malaysia. Then after that, we now move to what? We now move to Singapore. Look at it. The use of these fuel sources was slightly similar in Singapore. The major source of electricity in Singapore was also coal and lignite, which accounted for 42% of the electricity generated. Unlike Malaysia, however, Singapore generated a large fraction of its electricity, 39% from other sources. This is about three times what Malaysia generated from other sources. 13% of Singapore's electricity was generated from nuclear, and the other two sources accounted for the total of 3%. Can you see that? So we wrote about Malaysia and Singapore in this paragraph, and the next paragraph is now for the other countries. Japan, okay, South Korea, and what? And what's the last country now? Thailand. Japan, South Korea, and Thailand is what we now wrote about in this next paragraph. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're getting the gist. Writing our report, following what? Following the template of introduction, overview, main body, following the template of using the right tenses. In this case now, past tense. Why? Because it's what? The date is in the past, 2005, past tense. Okay? And if you have a report that doesn't have any dates, just use what? Present simple tense. This is an example of a table that has multiple dates, 2006, 2008, and 2010. So for this chart, you're going to see both languages. Language of trend and comparison. Let me show you. You see the head that overall making calls was very common. Very common. Can you see language of comparison there? And then look at language of trend here. Generally increased. Language of trend. Language of trend. So our reports must be as what? Must be as accurate as possible. Must be as detailed as possible. We must use the right tenses. We must use the right word, use the right languages. Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, okay, one more, last one, and then we're going to round up. Combination chart report. Look at this combination chart here. Combination chart involves either you have pie chart and bar chart like what you have here, or you have this pie chart and table, this pie chart and table. This is a pie chart, this is a table. Everything together, you write about the two of them. Or you have, here we have table and bar charts. This is a table, this is a bar chart. Here we have pie chart and table. Okay? You have bar chart and table. So you have all those things. In some cases, you're going to have two dates, like in this case now, two dates for the two of them. In some cases, only one of them will have two dates, and then the other will not have any date. Like this case now. Let me look for one that has what I'm saying. Look at this case now, this particular one now. The bar chart does not have, the bar chart has just one date, 2011. The pie chart also has one date, 2011. So that means throughout this chart, I'm going to use what? I'm going to use language of comparison only. Let me show you. Let me look for one that has okay. Okay, very good. Look at this particular question here. Let me look at this particular question here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a line graph and a pie chart. The line graph has multiple dates: June, July, August, September. But the pie chart, they didn't give us a specific rate for the pie chart. That tells me that what? When I'm writing my report, when I'm describing the line graph, I'm going to use what? Language of trend and comparison. But when I'm writing on the pie chart, I'm going to use what? I'm going to use language of comparison only. Okay? Let me show you the, what's it called? The report, and then we're going to round up on that note. So look at the report here, ladies and gentlemen. The line graph illustrates the changes in the number of books borrowed. Illustrates the word, the changes in the number of books borrowed. I want to make this thing illustrate the changes in number of books borrowed from 4 village libraries in 2014. The villages are as follows. So I mentioned the villages. Okay, the writer mentioned the villages here. The pie chart, now the next thing is the pie chart, compares, so this is just one pie chart. The pie chart compares the proportion of the different book types borrowed. The book types were self-help books, fiction, history, science books, and biography. Everything is here, is in this legend. Now, look at the overview. Overall, the number of books borrowed from Rice Sleep Library reduced. Can you see language of what? Language of trend during the period. The number of books borrowed from West Eaton and Churchmount increased. Look at it here. This red one, that's what? This red one represents Rice Sleep. That's one that reduced. This blue one and the purple one represent what? West Eaton and Churchmount. They are the ones that increased. Whereas the number borrowed from Suttonwood, that's color green, fluctuated. Fluctuation means the thing goes up and then comes down and then goes up again. That's fluctuation. That's fluctuation. So you see language of what? Language of comparison. I'm sorry, language of trend for this line graph. In addition, the most common, what is the meaning of most common? What language is that? Most common stands for language of comparison. The most common type of book borrowed are fiction books, whereas the least common type are what? Self-help books. Can you see that? I picked this information from the pie chart. Color red, that's the most common, fiction. And then the list is this blue one. Okay, now after the overview, we'll now move to the main body. In June 2014, so the line graph, more books. Can you see language of what? Language of comparison. Remember what I said that word? Whenever we have 2 or more dates, we can use both languages, and that's what is happening here. This line graph has 4 dates. That's 2 or more dates. So in June 2014, more books were borrowed from the Rice Sleep Library than from other village libraries. About 300 books were borrowed that month. However, the figure reduced. You see that I'm still writing about Rice Sleep. The figure reduced steadily every year. That's for the color red. This particular one that reduced. That's what we are describing now. The figure reduced steadily every month until September, when a figure of about 175 books were reported to have been borrowed from the library. Can you see that? So we have finished describing Rice Sleep. Nothing more. Next, in contrast, the number of books borrowed from the West Eaton and Churchmount Library increased. Language of what? Language of trend. In June, both libraries had the lowest number of books borrowed, about 50. This figure, however, increased to about what? About 100 in July at the Churchmount Library, and further to 150 in September. Similarly, the number of books borrowed from West Eaton increased to about 120 in July. Can you see that? Increased. Language of what? Language of trend. That's accurate word, sentence construction. Accurate description of what is on your report. There was a fluctuation. Can you see? We've now moved to the green one. That green one that fluctuated, this green one that fluctuated.
That's the next one now. There was a fluctuation in the number of books borrowed at the Sutton Wood Library. In June, the figure of 250 was reported. It increased slightly in July, but dropped. Can you see language of what? Trend. But dropped sharply in August toward 100 books. However, a sharp increase was reported in the following month when a peak figure of 300 books were borrowed from the Sutton Wood Library. The highest reported language of what? Can you see language of comparison? Final comparison. Now, we now move to the pie chart. This one is now for the pie chart. Moving on to the type of books borrowed. Moving on to the types of books borrowed. The most common book type reported was fiction, representing what? 43% of the books, of the types of books borrowed. Okay? The next in rank was biography. So we are basically describing this pie chart. That's what is happening now. It's basically describing this pie chart. And it's starting from the largest figure and then coming down. And that's how you order your sentences. Either you start with the largest figure and then you come down in descending order, or you start with the smallest figure and you go up. That's ascending order, increasing order. That's what. So here this person followed descending order. 43%. Can you see that? Then the next one is what? 19%. Then the next one is what? 14%. Then the next one is what? 10%. That's what? Descending order. That's good cohesion. Good cohesion. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have gotten something from this class. It's been a very long one, but then we've been able to cover all the different types of reports, from process charts all the way to what? To combination chart report. You must be able to handle any of these any of these different types of any of these different types of charts. So how do you improve in handling these charts? Take the time to study this PDF file. I'm going to share it with you. Okay, take the time to study it, number one. Number two, practice writing report. So I'm going to drop assignments for you to write on, okay? And then I'm going to assess and give you feedback so that you can learn and you can improve, okay? Improving your skill when it comes to what? When it comes to writing academic task one report. So I'm going to wrap it up on that note for today. Let me take one or two questions if there's any question. Does anybody have any question on what we have discussed so far? Does anybody have any question? Any question? Any question? Any question? If you have question, please ask your question. Okay, if there are no questions, I guess we're going to wrap it up on that note. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. I'm going to drop the link to this recording in the group, and then I'm going to drop the assignments, okay, so that you can go through it. Somebody says, is there a maximum number? There's no maximum number. The minimum number is 150 words, okay? If you like, write 170. If you like, write 180. If you like, write 200, okay? But please, again, let me highlight this again. Start with tax 2. Don't start with tax 1. If you start with tax 1, you'll be tempted to write a very long stuff and it's going to waste your time. And you end up not having enough time for tax 2, which accounts for more marks. Okay? So don't spend too much time starting with tax 1. Start with tax 2. Okay? So please keep that in mind. It's extremely important. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.